be an application by the property owner so that that could actually be rezoned. There has never been any application of that nature that came to the city. So it has always been regarded for the purpose that it was intended for. And a report to council, which is now a resolution of council, will be made available to yourself, indicating what SABC had actually indicated that other activities that are taking place in that particular facility, which, by the way, excludes the running of the ECG church. On the 10th or on the 9th of January, I had a meeting after General Mtombeli requested that we have a joint meeting, because they've been trying to organize a meeting between Sanko, who had actually started protesting, a meeting between the faith-based organization and also the city of Tshwane and the social development, to see whether we'll be able to then come up around a solution to that. Part of the agreement was that we needed to make sure that the allegations that were made, and I'm calling them allegations because, you know, I don't want to venture into that space of saying what was and what wasn't true. Part of what was agreed was that there will be an investigation, because there were allegations that there are people who are sleeping on the property, there are people who are preparing food on the property without any kind of health certificate, and so on and so forth. The place was a health hazard, that the place was a fire hazard. I then instructed the chief of emergency services, the chief of Metro Police, to make sure that we are able to then send the relevant directors to go in and do an inspection on the building. They went and did an inspection of the building. I then got a report back from the chief, which was a report written by, and I'll tell you just in a moment, which was a report written by the divisional chief responsible for business operations, that is Tanya Terablanche. And in that report it reads, to the chief of police, report written on the 10th of January 2019, the subject is inspection in loco of the SABC Hall D and Hall H. The City of Tshwane Emergency Services Department conducted a joint site inspection at the SABC Hall D and H. The fire safety section made the following observations of non-compliance during the inspection. The escape routes leading to the escape doors are obstructed. The escape doors to be used during an emergency are obstructed. Insufficient firefighting equipment provided. No emergency lights provided in the facility. No emergency evacuation plan available. And improper storage of dangerous goods, and they're referring here to a diesel trailer stored inside the building, was found. There was no proper seating arrangements during the inspection. The department can therefore not comment on the population load. Obviously, this happened when there was no church taking place on the day, so they said that they cannot comment further on that particular one. It was, however, noted by a number of chairs stacked in the hall that the population is perceived to be high during sermons. The population load may not exceed Hall D, which is equaling 778, and Hall H, which is equaling 1,900, providing that all the emergency escape doors are operational. And this was the report that was submitted, which then became a report that we then shared with the stakeholders that were available on the 9th of January in the meeting that we had. So that is the background of where we are, or how the city then got to be involved. I further then asked about the certificate, the JOC certificate that was issued in December 2018 to the ECG Church. And the response that I got was that the application was received on the 7th of December 2018. And there was supposed to be an ECG crossover for the 2018 service. It then further says that there was never any building control representation that was done, or any metro events representative and fire safety event representative or EMS event representative, which then says that this is also escalated to a medium size, which means that the South African Police Service are the first to respond if anything happens, and then all others will then have to respond to that. And this is also now the conditions in which this was approved. The event was also approved for on the same day, or the 7th of December 2018. There was also a question, Madam, about the issue of the bylaws relating to religious use or for any of those purposes. And the city of Tshwane has a bylaw regarding the use of zoning of religious use and purposes. The bylaw is called the Land Use Management Bylaw, and it's based on the National Act. It's also based on the SPLUMA, or the Spatial Planning and Land Usage Management Act. The bylaw was also approved by the city of Tshwane in January 2016. What we did then, Madam, is that we then asked our law experts in the city whether Tshwane was actually Tswabek was actually in compliant. And the response, or the opinion, is that Tswabek does not comply with the law. The city of Tshwane, as I said earlier on, is actually in court with the management of Tswabek, which is privately owned, to get the property back under the city administration in order to comply with the bylaw, amongst others. The land was donated to Tswabek, as I had said earlier on, for agricultural and recreational usage, which Tswabek is not currently using it for. The conditions of the donation states that if it is not used for those purposes, then the property must revert back to the city of Tshwane, and this is why we find ourselves in court dealing with that. I also want to say that the granting of land for religious use and purposes, the property is privately owned, and the church did not ask the city for the use of the property for religious purposes, nor did Tswabek ask for permission to use it for religious purposes. As I had mentioned, there was a certificate that was granted for the 28th for the gathering of the 28th of December 2018 for an event of not to have an every Sunday or everyday church, for an event, because they applied for an event. The compliance certificate was given to Enlightened Christian Church gathering in 2018. The event falls within the ambit of the Sports and Recreational Act 2 of 2010 and its regulation. The event was categorized as medium risk, as I've said, and giving the South African Police Services an overall command of safety and security of that. That will be my submission.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. We'll go back a bit so that at least there's clarity. Permission for the event on 28 December 2018, where this incident happened, was granted as a medium risk event. And then there was another event on the 31st of December, after the event. And permission was granted again after the event for the event of the 31st. When was this, I don't know what to call it, permit or
the permission,
compliance certificate given for the event of the 31st of December?
Madam, according to the JOC certificate that I'm sitting with here, the application was on the 7th, and it was supposed, and if you look at the JOC certificate itself, it will say, from what date to what date. So it then says that date of event would have been from the 1st to the 30th of December. So there would have been an event for that period. So they could have a number of events or sub-events that would have been taking place. So that it was, granted for that on the 7th of December.
Until the 30th.
Until the 30th, according to the job certificate.
The event of the 31st.
I wouldn't know. It's not in a job certificate that I'm sitting with.
Wasn't there a certificate issued on the for the 31st event? It was issued in between the incident and the crossover, which is 31st. You don't have it there by you.
No, ma'am. The only one that I have is stating that there would be an event between the 1st of December and the 30th of December.
Yes. It's for the general events. And then there's the special event, which was going to be estimated at 70,000 people, that was issued for the 31st. You've got a page missing there.
No, ma'am. The certificate will be issued as a one-pager document. So the certificate will be a one-pager document. So what I'm sitting with here is a certificate that was issued, as I said, on the 7th, as approved on the 7th. I don't have the additional one that the city would have provided on the 31st. And a job certificate, ma'am, will look something like this.
Yes.
So this is the one that I'm currently sitting with, or the one that I've been provided information of. If I'm looking at that one, ma'am, it's 5298, the serial number. Then it will be the exact same one that I'm sitting with. So I don't have any other one that would have followed from that one.
You see, what we're struggling with, which we are hoping you will help us with, there was an ECG crossover service to be presented on 12/12/2018.
Mm-hmm.
That was supposed to give permission for the crossover on the 31st. Then there's another one, event compliant, where this is part of what you know, where
No.
it comes in a different color. I'll pass it on to you.
Okay.
It then says event compliant, date of event 1 December. I don't know what the 31. It looks like December 2018.
Can you tell me the reference number?
5221.
5221. But then, you see, ma'am, we're using a system where all these will follow each other.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you 5298, sorry, which means that one would have happened before. This one that I'm sitting with here says the event was supposed to have taken place from the 1st to the, if you look at the date of event, it says from the
30th.
To the 30th. It says nothing about the 31st. It says even if you were to go event approved or declined based on the non-compliance with the City Bylaw and Safety and Sports and Recreational Act of 2010, it says ECG crossover 2018 service to be presented on 12/12/2018. That's what we're sitting with.
Yes. So what happened on the 12/12/2018?
I wouldn't know, ma'am.
It's not in your file.
It's not in my file.
Because we're asking, since if this one ends 30th December, and there was an event 31st to the 1st, I take it in the morning. What happened to the documentation there?
Well, ma'am, I'm sitting here with a documentation that clearly states that the or the booking of according to Jock, was from the 1st to the 30th. And a crossover, you know, for all we know, because that's what is stated in the body of the Jock certificate. Currently sitting with.
What we're trying to look at is the sequence of events up to the 28 and beyond the 28.
Mm-hmm.
There's still December, that was the 7th. And over thing. Twelve.
I'm sitting with, this was the only certificate that was given, the 5298, which you are in possession of. So the other one that is 5227
already in 5299.
Yes, or 5300, yes.
So what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is when the event took place on the 31st,
Mm-hmm.
where did it come from?
Well, ma'am, that's why I'm saying I don't know, because what would have normally happened, and I did give an instruction now to say I want all the relevant documents. So all the documents that I'm sitting with here is what the city is currently in possession of. So the job certificate, which I presented to you, the response in terms of you know, the team to comply. So all these are the documents that I had been given that I would also be able to present to yourself. If there is another certificate that was issued a day after, on the 31st, no, or would have been on the 31st, because this one, the job certificate, would have been, the event of the 31st would have been a special event, because then it would have, this job certificate would have covered everything would have happened there on the 31st. I have that certificate.
So that appearance or non-appearance. What happened thereafter? Anything to be there?
Mm-hmm.
And what about the metro traffic?
would actually controlled as usual by the Tshwane Metro Police Department. So that would normally happen. But if inside a venue, for instance, the first respondents will be the South African Police Service. That's why even if when you have events like a soccer match, you will never see the Metro Police inside the vicinity. You will see the South African Police there, and if they need secondary assistance, that's when they will be the Metro Police Department.
Can you use common language? What does that mean?
First respondent means that whoever is in charge of the event is that. So they are the ones who are assessing whatever is happening, whatever might go wrong. And that's why I'm saying if there is something that they cannot handle or they are outnumbered or whatever the case may be, then we'll have to rely on the service of your second respondent or third respondent. Your second respondent, if there's an emergency, might be your emergency services, or if there's an issue about crowd control, would have been your Metro Police Department.
I'm unpacking first respondent. Where is the first respondent sitting?
The first respondent, ma'am, is that they are the ones who are then taking control over everything that happens.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I want you to stay with me.
Uh-huh.
So, for you to take control over what happens, you can't be in your office when you're taking control over what is happening there. As a lay person, I take you to there looking around and looking for trouble or something. So are you saying the police, when you say that the first respondents should be at the event in layman's terms?
Ma'am, I'm not going to be able to answer on behalf of the South African Police Service. But what I can tell you is that when we have job services or when we have job meetings for events of a big magnitude, they are part of that. So we don't commit them. They will have to commit. So whether after committing something else happens, I cannot then say that they were there, they were not there, they were supposed to be here. There's an operation that they will have to plan for. Okay. And that's it becomes then an internal issue in terms of how they respond.
I'm talking bylaws to the law to everything. I'm saying in any event, a soccer stadium, whatever, it's a medium risk. When you're saying first respondent, let's leave the 28th. When you're saying first respondent, I'm asking whether first respondent must be at the stadium when it's a medium risk thing at the stadium. Generically, not in this particular instance.
All right, ma'am. Normally, when you're talking about joint operation committee or what normally then happens is to say who brings what? Yes, who brings what? Emergency will be there to say, if we're expecting X amount of people, then we need X amount of ambulances or people that will be able to then respond should there be an incident. Then you have, for instance, if there's catering that is going to be taking place there, then you have people that will also be looking into the issue of health issues in terms of the certification thereof. The people that are going to be selling food needs to also be compliant, right? And then you then get to if there's going to be a possibility of fire, do we now need to have a truck on the site, or do we need to have a bakkie, depending on the size of the event and what is going to happen there? And over and above that, then you need to then assess, if I'm dealing with a crowd of this magnitude, what is then the first respondent? And there is those categories in which needs to be complied with. So if there was an indication at that meeting to say we're expecting an X amount of people and declaring it a medium risk, do an assessment and purposes.
Okay. So at least we're getting some respondents according to generic level, medium risk. The first respondent at the stadium, this is a Chiefs versus a Kaluba football club. So it's medium risk. We're expecting about 30,000, 20,000 people. So the first respondent at the stadium, at the Orlando Stadium, would be stationed there according to the rules.
Yes, there needs to be an operation plan, strategy,
yes,
that is complied with. To say, operationally, this is how many people we're going to allocate. This is when they come. If there's anything else, what is an evacuation plan, if there needs to be an evacuation plan. But as I said, ma'am, I don't want to respond or cannot respond on behalf of the police service. I'm only stating what would normally have taken place in a job meeting.
Yeah. We're at the Orlando Stadium.
Yes.
It's Chiefs versus Kaluba level.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're not anywhere in any danger zone.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking theory.
Mm-hmm.
They should all be there at medium risk.
Not necessarily, ma'am. What normally gets to be communicated, obviously, be what is going to happen. For instance, if you're going to have a show where firework is going to be displayed, if
the fire thing.
then it will be what kind of events are going to take place there. For instance, if it's a cooking competition or whatever the case may be, then you are going to have health inspectors that are needing to be there. So it depends on what kind of event that takes place there, which will then determine, who in line needs to be able to then.
But for this match at medium risk, the first respondent would be there. They would have to be there as first respondents because it's me. And they all. There is a policeman which we'll have to discuss with the police one way or the other, even if it means because we feel that it's at the core of several things that then happened. I'm looking around, was this like 30,000 people, 20-something people? Take it. The Metro Police are driving around looking. Traffic officers were in the vicinity managing the traffic.
Particular day, but I including removing some of the people who were selling food on the street, removing something, you know, on the streets. There are no leading to that particular week, but I wouldn't know of what happened on the specific day.
Okay, so we take it that this thing happened, the incident happened, and certain things then happened in terms of incidents and whatever if it happened. But then the bodies were not there, because otherwise they would have seen that something unusual is happening that's out of your jurisdiction.
Even if bringing it, Metro Police would not act on that.
No, that's why I'm saying it's out of your jurisdiction, yes, because it's the first respondent who sucks.
Even you know, they will coordinate the area as traffic control officers, but they will not. If they were to respond, let's say they were in a close proximity and they are called in, they wouldn't have had the expertise or even the jurisdiction to deal with the removal of the body or bodies.
In your thingy, the job checklist, the committee checklist, it says job event checklist. If you categorize an event as medium risk categorization, SABC will appoint an authorized member to conduct security cluster meetings. Yes. Proof of the meetings held should be in. Did they give you the minutes when you came in?
Right, ma'am, and this is why I was saying that when there is a JOC meeting that takes place, and it confirms exactly what you're saying, to say there needs to have been a meeting in which there would have been, from all the stakeholder departments, there would have been somebody sitting there to say these are the operations that we're looking at. The applicant will also be invited to then say, tell us what would be happening in this particular event. Following that, then there will be an assessment, and then there will be permission granted or denied depending on the risk associated with the event. It's going to be a medium risk, as I said earlier on. Then the relevant authority will then be the head in terms of responding to whatever might be happening on that particular day. And once a plan is drawn, it will then be, there will be subsequent meetings which will then determine the operation. I, at the point in time, don't have the minutes of out, or at least from the Metropolis side. If there was, then can be relayed to yourselves.
Maybe before you talk, are they supposed to go and look at the event, a site visit, to look at all these things, or is it based on a tick, do you have this, do you have that? No, before, whether it's bylaw or national legislation, before you issue the compliance, should there be a site visit where certain things will be looked into?
Well, ma'am, again, kind of activity you're talking about, and it will also depend on the applicant, what information is provided by the applicant. It will be different from somebody who is saying we want to have an open field. We are bringing in toilets, mobile toilets. We're bringing. Then the compliance will follow a different route. Once you are putting in a temporary structure, you also now need to have an engineering certificate for that temporary structure, which then follows a separate, process. If you are going to ensure that you are having, the toilets that are going to be there, there's also a have food that is going to be cooked in that. Are going to be having also dictates as well in terms of what needs to happen. So it always follows a different approach in terms of what is being applied for and what gets to be granted. So I wouldn't know. As I said, I don't have the minutes of that particular meeting at this point in time, so I wouldn't have known what was submitted, what was checked in terms of the compliance before the team could got to a point where on the 7th of December there was an approval for an event.
Thank you so much, Chairperson and Executive Mayor. When I look at the checklist, there are a number of role players here. And you talked about clan. I want to check if there is a common clan. If there is a common clan, who is in charge? The church to bring up the code. I wanted to check if there was a local inspection, would what you have here not have been identified prior to the incident on the 28th of December. This is key because compliance implies that all the things that you have ticked here are actually enforced and implemented accordingly. So I want to check those two questions.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think there's two answers to your first question. One is that once an event has been declared and has been categorized, then the first respondent then become the coordinator. Because it then becomes should there be a need for an evacuation plan? As the coordinator, what then becomes the evacuation plan? Metropolis, this is what we're going to need you to do. Emergency, this is what we're going to need you to do. This will be our assembly point, and so on and so forth. Because then they would have been regarded as the people who should be there or need to be there in case anything happens. The second would be that depending on the information that had been submitted by the applicant, then you are able to then say, I don't need you to go in there. For instance, if I'm hiring a hall in the city, I know the condition of the hall. That is mine, right? So I know, for instance, if you want to come and hire Pretoria North Community Hall, I know what is there because I have an inventory of what is happening or what is there in my property. So once you want to come and hire that, I would have an inventory of, I know in that hall I have a kitchen, the kitchen would use gas or would be using electricity. These are the certificates that are already in place for the usage of that. Now, if it would be in a private setup where I wouldn't have the inventory, obviously then it follows a very separate process. And this is why I'm saying I don't know what had been submitted. I don't know what kind of engagements between the applicant and the JOC committee had in order for that particular certificate to have finally been issued.
Yeah, Chairperson, I'm interested in seeing the plan. because the plan gives effect to what has been agreed upon and sometimes even minuted. So that when we apportion where the wrong has been committed, right, something has not been done well, we're able to say it is at this point where the ball was dropped. As we have it now, it's like a really theoretical discussion, because once a committee comes together and they are planning an activity and we have a common plan, there must be an execution plan. Activity. Who does what there? So that on this particular day, on the 28th, we can say where did things go wrong at what point.
And that is information I will not be able to assist you with, Prof. I'm giving you response in terms of what I would have been told. These are the processes that have been followed. But I can't give you specific in terms of who was there on the day. I can't give you specifics in terms of what was discussed in that particular meeting. I can tell you what would normally be the process to be followed. What a process of applying for an event, what would normally take place in a meeting, and then what will then happen afterwards. But as I said, everything changes depending on the kind of application that has been received by the city.
We've been able to find the job permit thing. It's number 5340.
5340.
5340. Okay. I don't know if they didn't.
No, I don't have that.
The event was presented on the 31st of December.
On the day?
Yes.
That can't be.
What?
You can't apply for an event on the day of the event, because there's a whole lot of department that needs to come and give certification.
I think what will help, Aubrey, is for you to print out this thing. Yeah, because you see, you are saying now it can't happen. I'm saying to you it happened. It's from your things. I take it these things are in pages and pages, and then they take off a page, then it's the next one.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's another, what is that, carbon copy that happens there. So the issue the city issued the certificate of compliance as in 5340.
Okay.
And they issued it on the 31st of December. There's a stamp on the 31st of December saying the event.
If I may ask, ma'am, when was the application submitted?
When?
Yeah.
I think it was in that meeting of 12/12. You remember I was asking about the next event, the crossover, to be presented on the 12/12.
Right.
Isn't that other thing, the last one, which you have there, if you look at your...
Okay, ma'am, if I can have a copy,
the
because
529 something.
the job would have, the date presented there should be at the top, there should be something that's date presented, which will then...
It's 31%.
And then the date approved?
The stamped 31%.
No, I think that cannot happen. You cannot have an event, applied for today and approved for today.
Okay.
Because as I said, there are a lot of role players that needs to come in, and there's a lot of compliances that needs to be adhered to.
But you see, it's from your office or your building, and that's how things happened.
The ECG is not our building, ma'am. I think we need to clear that.
Oh, okay. Wherever this thing happened with Jock.
Okay.
Yeah. Jock issued the, let me see one of those so that I can see what they normally write. It says City of Tshwane Events Management, and then there's that thing that says City of Tshwane.
Okay.
And then it tells you the number. And then it gives you the whole thing, event compliant, and then there's a big City of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality stamp.
Yes, I want to, before we get to the stamp, right at the top under the date of event, okay, let's start with the date of event. What was the date of the event then, ma'am? Because I don't,
December.
the date of the event.
31st
Yeah.
December.
Date presented?
31st
Yes.
December.
Can be.
Okay.
Document.
I don't know what's the hold up with the printout.
Let's present it.
There you go. Yeah. It can be. Well, what we'll do, ma'am, is that perhaps somebody will now need to then, especially the person who had signed here would have to.
It's similar to the
Yes.
signatures you got there.
Then the person would now need to explain. But I'm giving you what would have normally happened. Worse, you wouldn't even have had a job committee that would have met on the 31st. Because, for you to have a job meeting, you need to be able to bring everybody into the same room. And if it's going to be a medium risk, you need to at some point bring in senior people into a room. And there needs to be all the sort of assessments that needs to be taking place from emergency, from road management, road traffic management, to safety and security of the personnel. As I said, if there's going to be in the application an application for the catering for catering purposes, that also now needs to have been complied with. So I'm saying that kind of meeting, ma'am, doesn't take place over 15 minutes and then we approve. But if I can be provided with that, I can then get the relevant people to then respond.
Yeah. Is it here? No, it's not that one. Okay. Let's focus, because we're confusing the mayor. Forget about all the other ones. I think we're zooming in onto a major crisis here.
Mm-hmm.
It happened. You see, when you say mayor, it cannot happen. It has happened.
Mm.
And it was issued after the incident. So there was an incident on the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
You issued another compliance certificate for the 31st. I don't think the church climbed over the desk somewhere and took the book and dropped there themselves. So to say it cannot happen, Mrs. will say, yeah, a cow would marry a human being. But here, the cow did marry a human being.
Ma'am, I'm responding in terms of what by law is allowed. Right? By law, I'm responding in that way. I am not in any way saying somebody didn't sign or somebody signed. I'm saying it cannot happen. Because when you're dealing with JOC, you need to give people time in order to appear into a meeting. You need to be able to then agree if there's some inspections that needs to be conducted before you are able to then sign over in terms of the compliance thereof. So you can call a meeting on the 31st. Somebody presents on the 31st for an event that is happening on that particular day and have a sign off on that particular day. I'm talking about in terms of what would normally have followed or what needs to have followed a process. I'm more than happy to engage with the Chief of Metro Police to find out who the signature belongs to, what process had been followed on that day, and then we can then provide you an answer to that.
Okay. But you say the challenge we're faced with, this builds up from the 28th.
Yes.
And then it travels up to the point where you then say there must be an investigation or whatever.
Of the compliance.
The compliance.
Yes.
Order to comply.
Yes.
To the ECG change.
Yes.
Okay. But what we're struggling with is that already the city knows that something happened there.
Okay.
And then on the 31st, they are said to be compliant again.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on the 11th of January, because this thing, the press statement is dated 11 January, and take it sometime in January.
Yes.
Then you said there must be an investigation.
Okay.
This follows the recent tragic stampede at the church that claimed the lives of 3 women and injured many congregants.
All right.
But you then asked for this to happen, this investigation. Whereas you didn't ask for the investigation to happen when they were going to have another event that is even bigger than that one. Because this one was now 70,000 people.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask that we differentiate between the number of things, ma'am? At any point where the city is requested to do an inspection, at any point, we can do an inspection.
Yeah, of course.
So if I'm asked on the 9th of January, as I said, the meeting that took place between SANCO, the faith-based organization, the South African Police Services, and any members of the community at large, there were allegations that were labeled or were presented. People sleeping in the church, or in the precinct, and so on and so forth. It is then my responsibility to say, when those things are presented to me, there and there I need to act, and that's the instruction that I gave on the day. What I cannot confirm was what was communicated after the incident of the 28th. Now, ma'am, you said we should not delve into how the bodies were removed and all of that. The police have also had their own version from the meeting that we had to say that the bodies were removed and nobody was informed. Now, if the police were not informed, the likelihood would be that my Metropolis members would have not also been informed. I cannot then say between the 28th and the 31st what would have happened. I'm talking about what logically would have happened if there was an issue that there's bodies there, go and collect the bodies as the law enforcers. Obviously, then you need to map up a crime scene in terms if there is a crime scene, as what the police told us when we met. And they said they had to reconstruct the crime scene because the bodies had already been removed from the scene. Now, if the bodies had been removed, I don't think the municipality can then be brought into then saying, what happened on the 28th? Didn't you know that this happened on the 28th? The question that we should be asking is, when did the police know of the incident? So that would have somehow also influenced what the Metro Police Department would have known and how they would have reacted.
Okay. By the 31st, I think the whole country, by the 31st, the media had already reported on the fact that people had died in a stampede at the church. So even if no one had told them, the police knew, the Metro Police knew, I knew as an ordinary citizen watching TV that something had happened there. So even Mamu Kaluva knew that people had died there. But we still issued a compliance event is compliant now that you have it in front of you. Dated 31/12/2018, approved. Because what we're trying to look at is, when did the emergency happen? Because you're now saying there, then there was sound. There wasn't anything else that triggered the Metro to say, something happened here. All the newspapers, TV, radio, everyone is reporting this thing. So by the time this stamp was put here, everybody knew what had happened. But the stamp was still put here. Whether it's procedural or not is something else. We're talking about reality of what happened on that day. Because our worry is, there was this incident that happened. We've got a huge interest in terms of protecting the religious communities. It's in the Constitution. We've got a constitutional responsibility to say, how then, what guarantees did you have, or whoever stamped this thing, that what happened on the 28th was not going to happen now that it's double the size. That it wasn't going to happen on the 31st. Because it continued. And then it stopped somewhere. And then, of course, the church was in recess by the time this thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I don't know if you've got this in your computer.
Yes, that was following the inspection that I had asked to be conducted.
Okay. So, what worries us and what should worry us as a nation is that the 31st happened, as you say, outside the normal procedure, which then makes it even worse than better.
Yeah.
But it happened, you see, it's not as if the church stole this page and stamped it and did whatever.
Well, ma'am, can I ask this in a It will be proper for us to ask what were the documents attached to this. Because if you look at the last incident or the last stance, it says the documents must be attached in front of your final plan, and person signing will take the full responsibility and accountability for the outstanding documents and the compliance for the event. Okay. So I am saying we should, ma'am, and as you had requested earlier on, we can actually request that whoever did sign this, be whisked here or be asked to come and respond to that. Because I wouldn't know what would have been submitted if the person that had actually given the permission had actually been provided with all the information to say this is what happened on the day. Again, if somebody comes and gives you an application, ma'am, I'm an official. I'm not a policeman. I'm an official. There's an event. These are the things that I need to comply with. I've complied with that. The certificate that, complies with X, Y, and Z, I'm attaching that. An official will then say, well, this is compliant. So this is why I'm saying it is important, ma'am, to then note that there's supposed to be documents attached to this to say these are the documents in which would inform whether an event is compliant or not compliant.
Let me take you back. It says here, NB, this document must be attached in front, of your final plan, and the person signing, that's chairperson of, JOC and received by, those are internal.
Yes.
Somewhere in the city or whatever,
right.
JOC. I'm not sure whether that's a misspelling. It says accept. I take it you want it. They want to say accept.
Yeah.
We'll accept. Yes, we'll accept full responsibility and accountability.
Responsibility and accountability for outstanding documents and compliance of the event. So it's the person who actually approves who must then take responsibility for all the documents. So it's someone within the system and not someone from the applicant.
Well, can I ask the question then? If the applicant knows that the place has been declared as a crime zone or has been declared as a crime scene, obviously when you're then doing the application, you should then be able to then declare that this place, there's this controversy because this has been declared as a crime scene. Therefore, you cannot contaminate or deal in this particular space. For me, logic will dictate that.
Mayor, I said to you, anyone who deals with these things should have known by the 31st what had happened in the church. Even Uman Kize,
I want to disagree
so
with you.
Say it's the church that was supposed to inform your people. Your people knew when they stamped this thing that there was something there. Whereas the church supposed to come in and say, we're applying to come and hold an event in the crime scene. Is that what you say?
Ma'am, I'm asking.
Don't confuse my
I'm
brain
not confusing you, ma'am. I'm responding in terms of what would normally be presented to an official that is supposed to look at all the documents. And I'm not saying that the official was right or wrong. I'm saying as well, there is also an element that could have been present to say this information was known by the church but it was never disclosed. There's a possibility of that being the case. So we should never ever discard that that could have been something that they would have known but never disclosed. So this is why I'm saying, ma'am, one of the things that we can do and should do is to ensure that we call the official and ask the official what was presented to you. Why was this information presented to you? Did you have any knowledge before submitting this? And we take it from there. I'm not going to respond in terms of what is happening on the day. I'm responding in terms of what processes should be followed.
You say, Mayor, we're back to square one. Your someone said, bring anyone. You could bring a whole bus from Tswana to come here. You chose to come alone. The someone says Joint Operations Committee, because they're the ones who created this mess. All these people who signed here should be here now answering, and not somebody else. Until we get to the bottom of it, because in the seat and nowhere else.
I disagree.
Do you expect, okay, let's take this step by step.
Yes.
The church goes there on the 31st. The whole nation knows that something has happened on the 28th. By the 31st, the media has informed all of us that something happened there, unusual things. We can go back to the media reports. We can make that available when they come back here to show how much coverage was done around the church and what happened at the church. Now, you say the church should have told you what is already in the public domain.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Otherwise, it means they were hiding something.
Let me ask a question. If there was a crime scene, did the South African Police Service report a crime scene?
No, that's a story for the investigation.
No, ma'am, you're asking about compliance, and I'm responding to compliance. Now, compliance says, was there a crime scene? Yes or no? If there was a crime scene, obviously in the application itself would also be able to then say, these are the matters that we are also now dealing with. If that was not declared, we can also say that there was information withheld. Now, I'm not responding, I'm not in any way responding on behalf of whoever signed this, but I'm saying, ma'am, there's always a responsibility from the applicant as well. So, for instance, if I'm going to apply, let's leave this issue alone. Let's use another example. I'm applying to go and have an event in Gamotag Resort. Now, Gamotag seems to have has a flat line or a wet area. Part of my application is to also say, please note, there is this kind of thing that is happening there, so that we are able to then ensure that when you are read them, are going to be intoxicated, you are able to then close off a certain area so that people don't end up falling into a dangerous area. You make sure that that information is disclosed, because you would know exactly where you want to go, or inspection would have taken place in terms of where the area is. And this is why I said, if somebody applies on the 31st for an event that is supposed to be happening on the 31st, and also permission is granted on the very same day, then I'm very much questioning what is happening there. So if we are able to then get to the official that had signed this, we are able to then look into what has actually transpired that led to this, and the person should then be able to respond. I'm responding in terms of processes that legally should be followed when you're dealing with the events in the city.
Okay. Where we are is to say we're back to the summons. And the summons had asked for Jock, so we'll ask for Jock to appear urgently. And we may have to do this when?
If the commission is still sitting, ma'am, I can get the person to be here in an hour or less.
We hope so, because this is at the core of the whole problem. Did you come here alone? We need to take 5 for you to call, or what do we need to do?
I think if you allow me, I can call the chief of metro and the chief of emergency. We'll then be able to identify the person who was responsible, and the person will be sent over.
Okay. Can we take 5, 10?
Maybe 20 minutes.
How many minutes does the man?
Well, ma'am, all I need is 5 minutes to call, but I'm saying then that will follow No, it's 5 minutes for me to call and then try to get the person. Yes.
Or not, and then you take
Yes.
a decision from there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yehlubi. Ibiseyi-crime scene mosilandawo.
The
Kube ishusha le
second one.
the second one.
Yes.
Ibiseyi-crime scene.
Yeah. Beyiyo.
So kungamelwanga ukuthi bayi-ishushe mosilandawo.
They shouldn't have. Lento nayo esitsho ke beyiyo. But they shouldn't have.
Usejayivini lo muntu osayine le nto.
Ekuyo san.
the side of events, and they'll be here in an hour.
Okay. Did you give them a copy of the document so that they can look into the big book? Because this seems like they are carbon copies.
I had asked them to bring the file.
540.
Yes, I've asked them to bring the book, the job book,
Yeah.
and the initial statement that I got was that there is inconsistencies in the documents, and they will bring the documents with them.
Okay. Did you ask them for the minutes?
I've
of
asked them
the
to bring.
meeting, because somewhere it says 12 December they are going to discuss this thing.
I have asked them to bring whatever documents that they have, ma'am. But already by just looking at the certificate, there was already concern raised. I don't want to say what I've been told. They will come and respond on their own.
Okay. How long do they need?
An
Because
hour.
you need to know how
An
long.
hour.
An hour.
Yes.
Okay. At about
4.
4 o'clock, 10 past 4, we should reconvene.
We are not starting together.
Okay.
Take an hour off.
Yes.
So